Your generation understands that. So what do we have to do? Most importantly, and here is the good news, that if 3 young people in America are registered tomorrow, the likelihood is that 2 out of those 3 will be progressives.
Yes.
So in many ways, the future is with us. Our ideas are the ideas of young people in this country. That is the very good news. But you know what the bad news is? Bad news is young people do not vote in anywhere near the numbers they should be voting. Now, here's the good news again. In 2018, you and I and many others made real progress, and the voter turnout for younger people was the highest in 70 years. That's the good news, but here's the bad news. Still a lot lower than older people. So here's what the challenge is. We've got a couple of challenges. First of all, most significantly, we will defeat Trump and defeat him badly if young people all over this country get involved in the political process and come out and vote. And, you know, my campaign is going to do everything possible. We're going to put resources into it. We're going to register young people from coast to coast. But we need your help to make that happen. We got it? You're going to work with us?
Oh, yeah!
And here's the point. If you go talk to one of your friends, and I know this will happen, and you say, you know, look, I think you got to get involved in politics. I think you got to register to vote. I think you got to be active. Some of your friends will say, hey, that's all bullshit. Politics doesn't mean anything. Right? Is that true?
Yes. Have you met my friend?
And you tell your friend, you're tired of hearing about how he can't afford to pay off his student debt.
Yep.
Yeah.
How you're tired of hearing him talking about the low-wage job that he has, or he can't afford a decent apartment. And tell him to stop complaining. Tell him to shut up or put up.
Yeah.
This is an historical moment with the most dangerous president in the history of this country in office. And our job is to get rid of him. All right? And make sure that this guy is never reelected. Now, we do that in 2 ways. Number one, we are aggressive in registering people and getting them to the polls. Our campaign right now has over 1 million volunteers.
Yeah.
And we are going to run an unprecedented grassroots campaign. The second thing is, you can't get people excited. You can't go up to somebody and say, I want you to get involved, unless you have ideas that make sense to those people.
Yes!
All right, and too often politicians are talking gibberish and not talking about the needs of ordinary Americans.
Yep.
All
Exactly.
right? So what we are going to do in our campaign, and have done for the last 4 years, is talk to those issues. Let me give you a few examples of some of the work we have done, with some success, by the way. 4 years ago, when I was here in California campaigning, I talked about raising the minimum wage in this country to a living wage, $15 an hour. And 4 years ago, when I talked about more than doubling the federal minimum wage, which is $7.25 an hour, people said that I was crazy, that those ideas were too radical, too extreme. Well, guess what's happened in 4 years? 7 states in this country, including California, have raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And legislation that I've introduced in the Senate and has been introduced in the House will, I suspect, within the month, be passed in the House of Representatives, $15 an hour. Okay? Furthermore, what we believe is that women deserve equal pay for equal work. We We believe also that workers are not going to make good wages unless they have the opportunity to join unions.
That's right. That's right.
Here's just a few others. I'm not going to go on for a long time, but here's just a few other ideas that we've been talking about for a few years, which used to be radical, but today are part of the mainstream political discussion, and in fact are now supported by Democratic candidates from school board up to candidates for President of the United States. And I see a little poster in the back there, and that's one of them. Healthcare is a human right. Medicare for all. Now, 4 years ago, that seemed like a radical idea. Ain't a radical idea today. Last poll I saw had 70% of the American people supporting Medicare for all. I want you all to know, in fact, let me ask you a question. See if you do know. How many major countries are there on earth that do not guarantee health care to all people?
Zero.
Just one. Just one.
You're limited. So you have to ask yourself why 34 million people are uninsured completely, and many of your families are underinsured with high deductibles and co-payments, right? Yes. All right. So what we have got to do, change, I know you're all very bright young people, and you know this. Change does not come easily. It's not wishing something to happen, you gotta fight for it. That is the history of the union movement, the history of the civil rights movement, the history of the gay rights movement, the history of the women's movement. None of the changes that you enjoy were ever given to anybody. No one said to women, oh yeah, you should have the right to vote, we're going to give it to you. Women stood up and fought for it. Nobody said to African Americans, oh yeah, you've been living under slavery and racism and segregation. Oh yeah, we're going to give you the right to vote, no problem. People fought and died to secure those rights. Nobody gives you nothing. Freedom has got to be struggled for, and it has got to be won. So when we talk about Medicare for all, it's not just, oh, isn't it a great idea, everybody should have health care. You gotta have the guts to take on the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical industry. 100 and some odd years ago in this country, working class people had a brilliant idea. And what they said is, you know, our children are working in factories, our children are working in the fields and on farms. We believe that our kids deserve to get a decent education. Not just rich kids should be able to go to college or even high school. We want our kids to be able to be in school and not in factories and not in the fields. And that was the beginning of public education in America. Public education. Well, when I was a kid, it was possible for somebody to graduate high school and then go out and get a good job and make it into the middle class. In many respects, that is not the case today. That for most of the good jobs, you are going to need a higher education. So 30, 40, 50 years ago, when people say, isn't it great, we have free public education from kindergarten through high school, isn't that wonderful? Well, it was. But today we need to go further. That is why we must have free tuition at public colleges and universities. So that every, not only young person, not only young people, but every person in this country who needs more education should be able to do that regardless of his or her income, okay? Furthermore, because of our absurd educational system today, we are in a situation where millions of people have left school deeply in debt. Huge student debt. You go to graduate school, we're talking $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 in debt. College, $50,000, $100,000 in debt. Now, some of you know that 10 years ago, the United States Congress, to the tune of $1 trillion and actually more, bailed out the crooks on Wall Street who destroyed the entire economy. Well, if the taxpayers could bail out Wall Street, we sure as hell can make public colleges and universities tuition-free and substantially reduce student debt.
That's right.
So here's my point. I'll give you a long list of things, that we should be doing, but I'm not gonna take the time. But what I will tell you is that in each and every instance, we need to be organized, we need to stand up, and we need to fight and take on very, very powerful special interest. Okay? The 1% has an enormous amount of wealth and power, but at the end of the day, they are just 1%. We are the 99%. Very quick points. Let me close with 2 other quick points. And now I want to speak to the young men in the room. All of you are aware of the very horrific legislation that was passed recently in Alabama and in Georgia. You're familiar with that? And these are pieces of legislation moving all over this country in Republican states, which essentially are denying women the constitutional right to control their own bodies. Okay? That's what they're doing. And I just want to say to the young men who are in the room, this is not a woman's issue. This is an issue for all of us.
Yes! Okay?
In this time of need, the men of this country have got to stand with the women.
That's right.
And the last point that I want to make is, I think all of you are aware of, again, another mass shooting, this time in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I often, every time there's a shooting, the media comes to you and says, what do you think? And you never know what can you say? What can you say? So I think back to something that President Obama said, and I'm paraphrasing him, a number of years ago after some terrible shooting. And here is the story. The story is that in America today, there are hundreds of millions of guns out there. Hundreds of millions of guns, including many, many assault weapons. And there are also, sadly, and this is an issue we have got to deal with, many people out there who are mentally disturbed, people who are homicidal, people who are suicidal. It's hard for you to put our heads into the mind of somebody who doesn't want to live anymore, doesn't care about life, and doesn't really care if he takes down a whole bunch of people with him. So is there an easy solution to this problem? I would be lying to you if I told you that there was. But this is what we have got to do. We need to pass what the overwhelming majority of the American people agree on, not disagree, they agree. We got to take on the NRA, that's number one. But number two, we have to pass common sense gun legislation, which says what is so obvious, is that people who should not be owning guns will not get guns. All right, that's not a hard concept to understand. The number of things that we can do. But one of the things that we should do, and I probably lost an election on this issue maybe 30 years ago, is that you are all aware of what an assault weapon is. An assault weapon is a military weapon designed to kill a whole lot of people in a very short period of time. Some of you may remember what happened in Las Vegas a couple of years ago, where some guy broke a window in a hotel and wounded 500 people and killed dozens and dozens of people. That's what a military-style assault weapon can do. It seemed to me 30 years ago, and it seems to me today, that assault weapons should not be sold or distributed
Yup.
in the United States. So let me just conclude by repeating what I began, and I don't want to get you all nervous, but the truth is the future of this country rests on your shoulders.
Yep.
And you are a great generation of young people. But you have to go out and mobilize your classmates, your friends, your coworkers. And if you do that, I have not the slightest doubt that A, we will defeat Donald Trump, and B, together we will be able to transform this country and create an economy and a government that works for all of us, not just the 1%. Thank you all very much.
Not me, us. Not me, us. Not me, us. Not me, us.